Throughout anime, there have been a lot of different power systems. My Hero Academia has quirks, Ruby has semblances, and plenty of them use the blanket term of magic. There's also the good old power of friendship. But Jujutsu Kaisen is a little different, not only with the magic they use being derived from negative emotions, but there's even an in-universe explanation for characters stopping mid-fight to lore dump about their powers. This is a binding vow called revealing one's hand. I won't really go into detail on what binding vows are, but my friend the Ugly Goblin did make a whole video on them. It's awesome, so you should go check it out. And the sorcerers in JJK use something called cursed techniques, which uses cursed energy, and it comes with a lot of unique and interesting powers. Yes, everyone is called a sorcerer. No, I am not making everyone a sorcerer. But these powers can range from manipulating space so there is an infinite amount of it between you and your enemy, cursed speech that forces anyone who hears you to obey, and my favorite, the Boogie Woogie from Todo himself, swapping places with his allies, enemies, and even items with just a clap of his hands. But today, unfortunately, we are not here for Todo, yet, maybe I'll make him later, but we are here for these guys, Yuji Itadori, Megumi Fushiguro, and Nobara Kugisaki. They make up this show's, I guess Team 7? They even have their own white-haired, special eye-wielding group leader, Satoru Gojo, who again, I'm not building this time. Sorry, not sorry. Also, I'm going to do my best to make sure this video is mostly spoiler-free. I'm not making any promises, but like I said, I will do my best. But with all that out of the way, we can get to the builds, starting with yet another chronic good boy, Yuji Itadori. Now, Yuji's story starts off kinda rough. Within the span of a day, he goes from just a dude living his best life with his gramps and friends, to losing his grandpa, and having to swallow finger jerky to save said friends and maybe not get eaten by a giant creepy ghost. But let's back up a little bit, to look at Yuji before he eats the gross-looking finger, because Yuji is far from normal. Sure, he's kinda dense, but despite not going out of his way to work out or train, Yuji is super strong when compared to a normal person, denting a soccer goalpost with a shot put, and leaping at least 2 to 3 stories up through a window to dropkick a ghost in the face. And his strength gets kinda out of hand with him casually throwing a car at a dude, but it's unclear if that was with or without cursed energy. Now, this strength and a few other things might come from him being some sort of weird experiment of some sorts, but again, I'm not trying to spoil too much. And despite maybe being the result of one of Kenjaku's freaky experiments, Yuji is still, for the most part, a human, getting both the tough feat and tavern brawler feats from his background. And I'm pretty sure I would call a car an improvised weapon if you're throwing it at someone. That and Yuji takes a hell of a beating on the regular, so he's gonna need some chunky hit points. Which leads us right into his stats. Again, he is super strong, takes hits like a champ, plus Yuji is hard to dislike. And he is a super friendly guy right up until you hurt someone he cares for, so good charisma score for later. And as per usual, these characters aren't necessarily dumb, it's just that Yuji really doesn't need intelligence for anything, so he's dumping that. And now we can get to what's really going on with Yuji after he chomps down on his finger. Because that wasn't just any finger. It was one of Sukuna's 20 fingers, an extremely powerful cursed spirit from 1,000 years ago, who was taken out through unknown means, but his fingers still hold a lot of power and are used to ward off other curses. And by eating it, Yuji kind of jumpstarts his own cursed energy, which is pretty much just magic powered by negative emotions, like I said before. Now, there are some implications on how this affects Yuji later on in the manga, but there is something I want to point out here. This is not a warlocked pack. Sukuna hates Yuji, and would sooner die than grant him any amount of his power, because Yuji, being the good boy that he is, stands against everything Sukuna is, so he's not a warlock. And like I said, this unlocks Yuji's own cursed energy, which eventually leads to him becoming a Jujutsu sorcerer with the goal of eating more fingers and dying. Well, you know, at least it's a goal, it's something. But while training and avoiding being killed by this sour old man, Yuji learns how to properly fight, since just throwing hands at cursed spirits won't really do much other than piss it off, unless those hands are coated in a layer of cursed energy. And thankfully for me who is building him, as of the anime, Yuji has yet to unlock his own cursed technique, only really learning 2 ways of applying his cursed energy. First off is the Divergent Fist, which is really him just being so inhumanly fast that when he punches, his energy has to catch up to him and hits a second time when it does. which he uses to trick people who are used to fighting him. And second is the much stronger Black Flash, which for Yuji is almost like a direct upgrade from Divergent Fist, applying his energy within a very specific time frame after he hits to amplify the power of the hit, which he's kind of a natural at, being able to land 7 consecutive Black Flashes in a row according to the wiki. And the way I see it, Black Flash is kind of Yuji's specialty at this point, so I wanted to focus on that for his build, along with his stupidly high strength. But this did leave me with the question, what is the best way to represent the Black Flash in 5e? And while I don't think my answer is the only one, obviously, I do think it's the best one for Yuji, so let's see what we're working with. And the first part of this is Yuji taking a full 3 levels in the Champion Fighter subclass. Honestly, I think this is where he is before he swallows the Sukuna finger, given how strong he is, which the Remarkable Athlete feature should help replicate. But what Yuji is really here for is the unarmed fighting style, and of course, improved critical, which is going to be the first ingredient in his Black Flashes, but critting alone really isn't enough, so we gotta keep going. Yuji is also going to take his first feat right after that, getting the Crusher feat, so his punches get advantage after he crits, great for Black Flashes, because for some reason, after you land a Black Flash, you are more likely to land another one. And of course, he also gets extra attack to help with this more. And when all is said and done, Yuji is going to spend a lot of time as a fighter, perfecting his Divergent Fist technique as he goes through fights with this creepy spirit, Mahito again. And after finally learning about the Black Flash from the best character in the show, Todo, he is going to jump right into a fight with another special grade curse like Mahito to test out said Black Flash. And here's where I think Yuji takes a small break from fighter to really make sure his Black Flashes are hitting as hard as they can. Because yes, critting on 19 to 20 and being able to crit more after you do is nice, but that's still not it yet. Black Flashes are a perfectly timed attack, like a frame-perfect hit that makes the crit that much stronger. And to get that, Yuji is going to make a vow with his new brother Todo and become a paladin. Now while Yuji can't really heal anybody, let alone himself, Sukuna does regrow his hand from time to time, so that's good enough. But you know what I'm here for. If Yuji is critting his way through fights with Black Flashes, then he's also going to be adding Divine Smites on top of those. Again, screw the new smite rules, they could just made it a once per turn thing, but I will rant about that in the comments if anyone wants to hear it. But at least for now, Yuji is only going to go 2 levels into Paladin, getting another fighting style and a few spells, but yeah, he's not going to be using those, because for Yuji, these aren't spell slots, they're smite slots. But that is just the beginning. Jumping back over to Fighter, Yuji continues to grow, fighting 2 blood curses alongside with Nobara, a grasshopper curse, and tossing a whole ass card dude. And as he takes more levels in Fighter, he grabs the Durable feat along with a +2 to Con and Strength. Heroic Warrior for free advantage once per turn, making him even more likely to crit, and ending with Superior Critical all the way at level 15. Meaning that Yuji can not only crit on 18 to 20 and again get advantage just for critting, but he can stack Divine Smites on top of those crits for even more damage. And that's probably about as far as he goes up until his loss against Choso, because if I'm going to talk about this next part here, there's going to be some spoilers, so be warned. So, from Yuji's point of view, this is how things went down. He got his ass kicked by Choso, passed out, almost died, and woke up several hours later overlooking a crater, one that his body was used to make. And while the memories of what Sukuna did, all the lives he took are still fresh in his mind, Yuji then gets to watch 2 people he cares about deeply get killed right in front of his eyes. And well, our boy does not take this well. At least until the best bro in the series shows up to save his ass. Sorry about that. But I bring this up because this is where Yuji finally takes his full oath as a paladin. And that is an oath of vengeance. Not just against Mahito, but against all curses. Which does put our boy Yuji at a final level of 20. 15 for Fighter, 5 for Paladin for those extra strong 2nd level smites. Meaning that by the end of this build, with between 3 and 6 attacks per turn, free advantage on one of those, Yuji is going to be hitting Black Flashes at least once every other turn, I assume. And with Divine Smites on top of those crits at least once per turn, he is going to be dishing out a ton of damage. And by the end of all of this, Yuji will be a changed man. He'll keep killing curses.
I'll just kill you. And if you're ever reborn again as a new curse, I'll kill you then too. I'll still kill you again and again. And I'll keep on killing curses until I rust away. Because that seems to be my role in this war.
So, the setting for JJK is kinda really dark, so let's just put that aside for like a minute to talk about today's sponsor, which yes, is the same one we have for the last 2 videos, Cheipaku. They make amazing maps for your tabletop game of choice. Doesn't have to be D&D, that's just what I use them for. And with somewhere over 6,000 maps, they will have something you like. From basic road through the forest maps, to train station, flooded rivers, or rusted and decaying giant robot maps, they kinda have stuff for everyone. And that isn't even including the 20 plus variations that each and every map comes with. You can change the time of day, add or remove important features, change the watercolor, completely change the landscape from a forest to a desert, and so many other things that change how the maps feel. They also come gridded or gridless, which is great if you use Roll20. On top of that, they have animated maps with moving water, flickering lights, these kinda creepy giant pulsing mushrooms, and a ton more. And they release new maps every week, which you can either get on their Patreon or buy individually on their website if you really want just the one. Plus they have even more stuff on there like their scenes and a super customizable token maker for NPCs, monsters, and player characters. So if you're looking for some really high quality maps for your game, whether it's D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, or anything else, Sheipeku has them in droves. And you can find all of this in the link in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Okay, now we can see just how we're going to tackle the rest of this team. So I had a little bit of a time with this build. Megumi Fushiguro is a bit of a weird character. His childhood scarred with dead family, leaving him and his sister to fend for themselves until Gojo steps in to take care of them instead of letting them fall into the hands of another clan. And while under Gojo's care, Megumi would get into a bunch of fights, mostly just beating up bullies at school, but he would also learn how to use his own curse technique, the 10 Shadows, which is an inherited technique of the Zenin clan, giving the sorcerer the ability to summon a bunch of different shadow creatures that they're contracted with, but only after they beat each individual one in a subjugation ritual. And to help with this, they are given 2 demon dogs to start with, but those are their only freebies. Megumi would use this to, again, punish more bullies, and save innocent people from curses well before he actually got any proper training as a sorcerer. And after some time of training with Gojo and actually going to a Jujutsu academy, Megumi becomes a Jujutsu sorcerer and is sent on a new mission where he meets a new, well, I wouldn't say friend yet, but new acquaintance in Yuji, a seemingly normal person who has no problem kicking ghosts in the face and eating random cursed fingers. Now, there isn't actually a ton to work with, but that should be fine. It's easy to tell that Megumi is a human. There are possibly some other options, but he's a human with the magic initiate feat just for simplicity. I also gave him the clan sorcerer background, which I decided comes with the alert feat, even though he does have a bit of a habit of getting surprise attacked. Now, Megumi is kinda weird with the stats. Sure, he's super stoic and cold, but it's not like he can't communicate or be friendly when he needs to. Plus, after a while, he does open up and show that he can also be silly and joke around, even if it's only a little bit. So this might seem weird, but I'm going to give him a high charisma, dexterity, and wisdom score, which we'll get into why right now. Because while Megumi has his shadows to fight for him, he's not only not afraid to get in there and throw hands, but that's how he started off, beating up bullies with his bare fists. And because of that, Megumi is going to start off as a monk, getting martial arts, unarmored defense, and unarmored movement. But he's actually going to stop almost as soon as he started, since the other main class Megumi needs is a little bit more important, at least for his summons. And that is going to be the Sorcerer. Now, I will mention that for some reason, Wizards of the Coast do not want sorcerers to have summoning spells. Not that I've let it stop me in the past, but still. Just know that you might have to bribe your DM with pizza to get a few of these spells. But aside from that, jumping right in, we know that Megumi, along with every other 10 Shadows user, starts off with the Demon Dog summons. And that is actually really easy for the Shadow Sorcerer to get with their level 6 feature, Hound of Ill Omen, summoning a Shadow Dog that uses the Direwolf stat block, which also means that he gets features like Innate Sorcery, Meta Magic for Extended and Quicken Spell, and the other Shadow Magic features like Eyes of the Dark and Strength of the Grave. And honestly, Megumi takes enough beatings that I think he's going to be putting that last one to use pretty often. I didn't really realize until now how brutal this show was. All the main characters get the crap beaten out of them like every other episode. Anyways, after that, he's going to grab a +2 to his charisma, and another +1 to it from the Warcaster feat once he hits level 8. Because for obvious reasons, Megumi wants to have his summons up, so Warcaster is going to make sure that they do that. Now, as for what these summons actually are, we've seen a few of them in the show. His dogs, a lightning bird, which could be an elemental with summon elemental, frogs, a big snake, another elemental in the shape of a big-ass elephant, and my favorite, which is his rabbit escape, where he just summons a massive horde of rabbits that know how to throw punches, and it's great. And a lot of these summons can be gotten with spells like Conjure Animals, Spirit Guardians, Conjure Minor Elemental or Woodland Beings, Summon Aberrations, Summon Elemental, and the somehow different Conjure Elementals. And again, I know these spells aren't normally on the Sorcerer list, but the subclass came out before the Sorcerers got subclass relevant spells. So I'm just going to include these spells in that, and again, just bribe your DM with pizza and you should be fine. But moving on from that, I really couldn't talk about his summons without also mentioning Megumi's trump card, the Divine General Maharaga. A massive, terrifying white beast that can pretty much one-shot curses thanks to a special sword it has, and happens to regenerate and adapt to whatever you try to use to kill it. And Mahoraga is way too strong for Megumi to control. In fact, no one ever in the history of the clan has ever actually successfully done the subjugation ritual to Mahoraga. But that doesn't mean that he can't be summoned, just not controlled. Anyone can start a subjugation ritual and involve somebody else in it. And if that person isn't strong enough to beat him, well, you're both going down. And Megumi tends to threaten this when his back is pressed against the wall if he has no other options, because, well, if he's gonna die either way, he might as well take the other person with him, right? Hell, even Sukuna had trouble damaging him after he adapted, and had to pull out all the stops to overwhelm Mahoraga before he could adapt to his attacks. And finding a spell or a summoned creature that fit for Mahoraga was not easy, since there really isn't one that fits. But the spell Conjure Celestial or Summon Fiend could work, especially Summon Fiend with how they can kind of turn on you if you don't control them properly. Now beyond that, there is one more thing Megumi has up his sleeve. It's incomplete and sloppy work at best, but he does have his own domain expansion, the Chimera Shadow Garden. But with a combination of spells like Shadow of Moil and the Shadow Walk feature from Sorcerer, Megumi can teleport around the darkness and beat the crap out of people as much as he needs. It doesn't have the infinite summoning thing, but that's just not something I can do. Because honestly, even this is a stretch, and while I'm sure I could have snapped the spell list in half and found something that fit, I'm already kinda pushing it by adding all the summoning spells in the first place, so I'm just gonna leave it at this for now. But he isn't quite done yet, since Megumi does jump back over to Monk for the speedy feat and things like Stunning Strike and Extra Attack, and he also takes another +2 to his Constitution, bumping it up to 15 so that he has even better concentration checks. And there are definitely better ways to make a summoner that aren't shoving a bunch of summoning spells into the sorcerer, but I think this is still best for Megumi given the flavoring of the Shadow Magic Sorcerer and the 10 Shadows technique, plus the Demon Dogs. We just need to hope that no one comes along and, can use his spells better than he can.
We're out here now! Let's go!
You know, I really hate frogs.
Well, that's too damn bad!
Okay, so I feel like I was really walking on thin ice for Megumi's build, so for this next one, I'm not going to do any of that. Some creative flavoring? Sure, but I'm going to do my best to not bend any rules. Now, Nobara is also a strange girl. There's kind of a theme going on with this team, I think. But she did grow up in a really weird place, so I'll give her a pass on that part at the least. She is extremely blunt and straightforward though, almost coming off kind of tomboyish if it wasn't for the fact that the first time we see her, she's trying to get scouted by a modeling agency. And it's not like she's a bad person, she beats up bullies at school, yet another theme with this team, plays Smash Brothers with her friend's older brother, and can be really friendly after you get past her rough exterior. Nobara also has a really interesting fighting style that we'll get into right after we talk about her stats and setup. And yes, just like with the other three, I made Nobara a human, and I gave her the tough feat for reasons that we will touch on in a little bit, as well as the savage attacker feat from her background, since again, she beats up bullies in her spare time, so no wonder her and Megumi get along in their own little way. And given how Nobara fights and tanks her own attacks sometimes, a stat spread like this is what I'm thinking. With high dexterity since she mostly uses range attacks, along with honestly really high constitution, because Nobara not only has the guts to stab herself with big ass nails to hurt a curse, but then hits them over and over again with her own technique. This girl is tough. And the rest of her stats are okay. She's not nearly as strong as Yuji, but decently so, and the others aren't really super important. What is important though is her kind of weird fighting style, because despite carrying around a hammer, she doesn't usually smack people with that thing too much. No, instead she uses it to fling nails at her enemies, using the hammer like a baseball bat. This is Nobara's straw doll technique, using her hammer, nails, and of course a straw doll for doing voodoo. She also has her hairpin technique that causes the nails to expand and explode shortly after, and resonance, which is really weird but uses a severed body part and the straw doll to do stuff to the main target. That one might be a bit harder, but I'll see what I can do. So the first issue here, as always, is just picking her base class. We need something that is both competent at melee combat, but also has options for ranged and or thrown combat. Plus Nobara can land black flashes, so she'll need something for that too. And for this, I think a rogue is a great start, giving her sneak attack, which works for black flash, and weapon mastery for her nails. But also this has the first piece of how I got her straw doll stuff, with the Soul Knife subclass. Their Psychic Blades feature is a perfect fit for her nails, and the level 9 feature Soul Blades is an even better fit for Hairpin, letting her use some of her new energy die to make an attack that would have missed hit instead. And she can also make 2 attacks base with her Psychic Blades, which makes landing sneak attacks and therefore black flashes even easier. And because I somehow tend to leave the more simple characters for the end of the video, Nobara is actually going to stick with this class the entire time, since that's the best way for her to get resonance later down the line. But first, let's talk about what resonance actually is, since again, it's kinda weird. It is essentially voodoo, where she can take apart like a hand, arm, or even just the cursed energy of a creature, and by hammering a nail into it along with her straw doll, she can amplify the damage and send it back to the main body. And this does damage, yes, but it's also a huge surprise and can leave the target paralyzed in pain for a good few seconds, leaving them open. And like I said before, she can use resonance on herself. When fighting these two blood curses, since one of them had a curse on her, or maybe it was just their blood in her system, either way, it was strong enough that stabbing herself with her nails caused the spirits immense pain, letting Yuji pummel on them for a good while. It's also one of the only attacks in the series that is effective against Mahito, since it directly targets the soul. Now I will say, this build went through a few revisions as I was writing the script. I had her with a few levels in the Psy Warrior Fighter, but this feature was so close to Resonance that I had to change the build to get it. And that is the final feature for the Soul Knife Rogue, Rend Mind, which lets Nara hit the target with a Wisdom saving throw after dealing sneak attack damage with her Psychic Blades. And if the target fails, they are stunned, only able to make a saving throw at the end of their turns for 1 minute. Meaning if something has a low Wisdom score or just gets unlucky, she could hammer nail after nail into them for a solid 10 rounds, or better yet, hit Black Flashes with her 9d6 sneak attack damage. And being a level 17 rogue means she also gets 5 total ASIs, most of which are going into her stats like Dex and Con, but one does go into Con saves for the Resilient feat so that she can take the ridiculous amount of damage that she is putting out, and maybe hold on when she should otherwise be dead. Nobara's build is deceptively simple, but the Soul Knife Rogue just fits it so perfectly. Sure, it might be missing 1 or 2 things with how Resonance works exactly, since Rend Mind doesn't do damage, but that's hardly an issue when she's also dealing 9d6 sneak attack damage just to use it. So just because she's simple, that doesn't mean you can underestimate her, because I'm sure if you do, it's gonna come back to bite you in the butt one day.
What's this? A challenge?
Nice support, monkey!
Okay, so this one took me a lot longer to write than I wanted. I kinda had to go and rewatch a bunch of the show. I wasn't fully caught up technically, and I'm still pretty sure I missed some stuff, so you can tell me about that in the comments if I did screw anything up. But before we end, I do want to thank Cheipeku again for sponsoring us. Make sure to go check them out in the pinned comment or the description. Also, Homie and the Dude, we still have that massive 35% discount code if you want to buy anything from them. That is code GMG. They are also linked in the description below. And as always, I want to thank my testers for going over these builds with me, even if I had to do some last minute changes to make stuff work. Of course, there are also my patrons who continue to support the channel, even when we're having a bit of a rough patch sometimes. You guys are the best, and I'm working on some new stuff, I promise. I'm getting more stuff on Patreon for you guys. It's just taking me a bit more time than I'd like. But that is going to do it for today, though. I will see you all next time, and as always, have a wonderful day.